just remind you about a couple of housekeeping things. We are completely updated on YouTube. So as you guys know, we got probably over 500 videos on YouTube that cover basically any possible topic you could think of with respect to real estate. Everything from scripts, role play, mindset, presentations, pre-qualifications, process, checklist, tips, profit share, pricing, CMAs, role play, you name it, it's there. So if you ever have any questions about, what do I do when I have a buyer? What do I do when I have a seller? I'm in this stage of the process. What do I do next? Everything from putting offers together to discussing the financing contingencies, appraisal contingencies, how to win in multiple offer situations. The resources are there for you. So I encourage you, if you're not already subscribed and getting notifications to the YouTube channel, please make sure you are doing that.
Just to confirm, that's the YouTube channel just for the PC group, or is it for what?
That is exclusive to the PC group. Yes. Exclusive to the PC group. The link is in the email that I send out every week, so you can bookmark that and get to it very easily.
Awesome.
And we have titled everything nice with graphics and all that stuff, so it'll be easy to navigate. And you can also search. So if you're looking for, let's say, buyer, you can type in buyer and you'll see, buyer presentation, buyer prequalification, buyer listing appointment, buyer scripts, all that kind of thing. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, so today's class is going to be on the seller checklist and info sheet. So I want to take a little bit of time to, I kind of went through and kind of updated it, if you will, and made it a little bit more 2021 instead of 2016. So I changed all the dot loops to Docusigns. I changed all the drop boxes to Google Drives. And some of the old technology that we used to use, or I used to use, has now been kind of renamed. I will post this checklist in the chat here shortly. And what I went ahead and did is I have a separate tab here for the info sheet. So the info sheet that we talked a little bit about yesterday, that's applicable both for when you're working with home buyers and home sellers. You can just have it as a secondary tab in the, if you have an Excel sheet or a Google sheet or whatever it is. So just to remind those that were maybe not here yesterday, this is the info sheet. Everyone can see the screen, right? I decided to share the screen this morning before anyone came in to make sure we didn't get kicked off or something. But remember, this is a great resource, in my opinion, just to keep all the details in one place, right? So many times we're on the go, we need to access something quickly. And hopefully you guys reach the point in your business where some of the administrative stuff can be tackled by somebody who loves doing administrative stuff, right? So every system that I ever created, or I had somebody on my team create, was a function of how do we create efficiencies here? How do we get to what we need fast? And how do we do it on the go? So what we did is, and of course, obviously you can edit this, but if you edit it, please take it out of the Google Drive first, or let me rephrase that. Save it onto your computer, then do whatever you want with it, as opposed to changing the one that's in the Google Drive, okay? So there are, as you're going through the contract process, when you're writing amendments and these kind of things, you're always gonna have to reference, binding agreement date, offer date, these kind of things. You're always going to need to know, hey, is this amendment 1 or 3 or 6 or whatever? Did I name that F or G, right? So this is an opportunity to keep it all organized and straight. Okay. So I'm just going to take 10 seconds to kind of scan through this again, just so you can kind of get an idea of how thorough I think it's worthwhile to be. Okay. So again, it's not much change from the info sheet for the buyer, but you got property address, parcel ID, seller name, seller contact information. And of course, you're filling this out as you get the information. So on day one, you certainly know all these things, but you don't know who the purchaser is yet. That'll come. Okay. So FMLS, George MLS, list date, expiration date, original list price, current list price, seller contact information. Which lockbox did you use? What's the CBS code for the lockbox? Remember, the CBS code is The CBS code is a code that non-realtors, or let me rephrase that, non-real estate agents, right, would use to get into the home. So for example, the termite company or the home inspector or the foundation guy or the, appraiser, right? They don't have the typical super lockbox key. And so they need, well, they don't have access like we have as realtors. They have the key, but they have to use something called the CBS code. And the CBS code is tied to the lockbox number. Okay, if you don't know what the CBS code, you probably got it when you bought the lockbox. And if not, you just need to call the superstore and they can look it up for you. Candace?
Bill, you can also go into your Supra Key app and you just click on My Key Boxes, and then you'll see a key box number. And when you click on that, you just say Program Key Box, and all your serial number, your program date, battery level, the shackle code, the CBS code, all of that is right there.
Yeah, just as a tip, I had them change it one time, so all the shackle codes were exactly the same.
Right, yeah.
Right. Now, all the CBS codes are going to be different per lockbox, but I tried to make it simple for all my shackle codes to be the same. A shackle code is, or the lockbox code is when you push the thing and it comes out the bottom, that's where you get to key. The shackle code is how you unlock the top, so you can actually put it on a doorknob. Okay. So purchase price, seller closing cost, earnest money, who's it held by, loan type, down payment, home warranty, amount, notes, that kind of stuff. These is all the dates: offer date, binding agreement date, earnest money deadline, due diligence ends, financing contingency ends, appraisal ends, home sale contingency expiration, closing, possession, these kind of things. So basically it's like a bullet point reference page for the details of this particular transaction and all the paperwork involved in the transaction. Okay. So once you get it, of course, you're having your buyer's agent information here, their email address, their phone number, their fax. See, this was written in 2016. We used to use these things called fax machines. It was really interesting, right? Candace, you remember the days when we deliver 7 copies of the contract to the other party, don't you?
Oh my goodness. Don't take me back there.
Blue ink signatures on all this stuff, right? And so every person could get a blue ink copy. Anyway, brokerage, MLS code, board of realtors, listing agent email, right? All the contact information for the other party. And then of course, any information for the lender and the closing attorney. Because there would be times where like I'd get an email and I needed to, send something quickly to the lender for a file, and I might have had 6, 7, 8 files going on at the same time, and I'd have to ping my assistant and say, hey, who's the lender for this one again, or who's the closing attorney for this one again? And she'd go straight to this and she'd have the answer in 2 seconds, right? Now I want to say something really briefly. I know this is a little off topic. Hang on, Aubrey's hitting me up. Okay, I know this is a little bit off topic, but what I just said, I want you guys to hear something very interesting about what I just said, which is I could have looked that up, right? I could have done that. I could have stopped what I was doing. I could have, looked up what I just said I needed to look up, and I would have spent 10 minutes doing $10 an hour work. Problem is if you're a full, full steam ahead, full-time realtor, your income should be somewhere in the $300 to $400 an hour neighborhood. So I know we can do a lot of things, okay? The problem is number one, oftentimes, if you love being out in the public, interacting with buyers and sellers, you dislike being in front of the computer doing administrative tasks, right? And so I always want you to have in the back of your mind, hey, is this really in the 20% of work that I should be doing to move my business forward? Or is this something that I have to do because I need to earn the amount of money to pay somebody to do this for me in the future? Does that make sense? It's not about like, this is my job and these people are down below me or something. It's a team effort, right? You're doing that job because you love doing that job. And I'm doing this job because I love doing this job, right? Your job is just as important as mine, probably more important, to be honest. Make sense? Okay. So let's move over to the checklist real fast. Now, the idea here is, again, this is just my checklist, okay? If we come to it and we realize that we should add some things or take some things out, it's totally fine. You're running your own business. That's the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur and an affiliated with a company that believes in supporting their agents running their own business, right? We're not being asked to run the exact same business as every one of your Keller Williams colleagues, okay? You have the ability to be unique and to do something special and to do something that represents, the mission of your business, okay, and the standards of your business. Okay, so just like yesterday, to keep it real simple again, we have the action, we have a column for yes and no, did we do it or did we not do it, the date that it was done, and any notes that are relevant, right? And this was a shared document between my assistant and myself, okay? Now, or my assistant and Pam, whoever was running the file, okay? Now, we had a standard where every morning, my assistant, her name is Luth, she would write me a note that says, Joan's file, these are the next 4 things that need to get done. Stephen's file, this is the next 4 things that need to get done. Adam's file, these are the next 4 things that need to get done. So she wasn't telling me I had a binding, or I had a, let's say, an appraisal contingency expiring on Monday, because that's hard to deal with. I want to know the previous Monday. Does that make sense? That way I got some time to navigate stuff if there's an issue. Okay, seller intake sheet. We talked a little bit about the intake sheet. That is something that you should have in place on your desk, ready to use at all times, okay? This is essentially a list of the appropriate pre-qualification questions you should be asking a seller, right? And it notes things like, where did the seller come from, right? What was the source of this lead? When did you meet them, or when did you first initiate the conversation, right? And it has blanks for the question and the answer. Remember, if we know that all throughout the day, our job is to go out and find buyers to prospect and sellers to prospect, don't be surprised if you end up talking to somebody who wants to buy something or sell something, right? So we want to prepare for that. So when somebody says something that sounds like, oh, you might be a seller, you say, great. You say in your mind, hey, this is somebody who's starting to sound like a seller. Let me reach over to the corner of my desk and grab the intake sheet. And then you got the questions right there. Does that make sense? Okay, so we have an intake sheet. By the way, at this point, I've asked a lot of the pre-qualification questions of a seller, so I understand things like, why are they considering moving? Are they interviewing other agents? Why is moving important to them? What's their time frame? What do they think their home is worth? What type of equity do they have? Have they been interviewing other people, right? What's most important to them about the process? What's most important to them about the realtor they're going to hire? Remember, presentation is the wrong word. It's really a needs analysis. Nobody wants a presentation. Nobody wants to sit down and listen to somebody yap at them for an hour about how great they are. Okay, no one wants that, right? You're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, how many more pages are in this freaking binder? I don't want to listen to any more of this. I wish you would ask me some questions about myself. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so it's really just a series of appointed questions asked in the appropriate order. Okay, so I've got a real good idea of if this guy is going to be, or this woman is going to be a good candidate for me. Okay, now I'm going to send a thank you video, right? It may be a video that is, it may actually be 2 videos. One is a video that describes kind of your brand and the mission of your organization. It's really cheery and happy, and it's something that you can send to every client. And it's it's more of a branding video than a thank you so much, Michael, for spending the time with me. I really enjoyed meeting your wife, Jane, and your children, Bob and Susie. And I'm so excited to get you, to Tampa by the springtime or whatever, right? So there's kind of a marketing video, like Markia had a great marketing video a couple of weeks ago that she had created, right? And the 5 winners from the contest last week will have great marketing videos that are more like blanket. But what I'm suggesting here is a personalized video. Candace, it was such a pleasure meeting you. I am so excited for our appointment Thursday at 2 o'clock. Just as requested, I will be bringing some data so that we can review. And I'm really excited to talk to you about what you said was really important for you, which is some of the renovations you've done or home staging or whatever. Make it personalized. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to
create that video, Bill.
Sorry?
How do you create that video?
That could be as simple as video text from your cell phone, right? Remember, a lot of people are not necessarily looking for every communication to be, perfectly polished and edited, right? People want to see that you're a real life human, right? And they want to see a little bit of personality, I think. And so that could be as simple as clicking the video button on your phone, recording a 20 or 30-second video, and texting it off or emailing it off to your prospect. Okay. So now we're going to update our client database because now we know more stuff about them, right? Now we might know some of their hobbies or some of their goals or some information about their family, their kids' names, their birthday. We might have found out a bunch of new stuff after that conversation. So we're going to update the client database, right? Maybe we'll add the person to the database, or if we've already got them there, we're gonna kind of fill in some of the blanks. Now, remember yesterday we talked a little bit about the difference between the things that are bolded and not bolded. The bolded stuff is, in my opinion, it is what my assistant would do, and the regular font stuff, the not bolded stuff, is what I would do as the real estate professional. Okay, so I would have a system of, really what I was doing for the most part. This will date me a little bit, but I was Skyping with my assistant all day long. And when I would meet, let's say, Michael Gould, I'd be typing a lot of my information into Skype so that she would update it there. If I was on the telephone with somebody and I was filling out my seller info sheet or my seller intake sheet, I might just take a picture of it and Skype it to her. And then next thing you know, poof, it's in the database, right? Okay, so now I'm going to update the client database, or she is. I'm going to go on the listing appointment. Okay, I'm going to update the client database again because there's a good chance I'm going to ask some more questions. I'm going to learn some more stuff, right? So at all times, we want our database to be as complete and thorough and detailed as possible. Okay, I'm going to search or research to share with the seller, right? So after that meeting, there is most likely, particularly in today's market, if they want to do something that, let's say they're like, hey, I got to clean up the basement. We won't be ready to go until, early next week. It's like, okay, well, the market could be totally different early next week. So I'll give you a range of where we think the prices could be, but we're going to do all this research again come Monday, because something could have sold, something could have gone under contract, something could be new on the market that might totally affect our pricing strategy. Okay, so I'm going to share the research that I do with the prospect. Now, I know I've talked about this before, but I'll just say this one idea again, which is, and I'm not suggesting this is the only way to do it, it's just the way that I found to be pretty successful, is remember, you're on the seller's team. You're not, like fighting, you're a partnership, right? So I never like to go to the seller and say, 285, sign the paperwork, right? It was, look, I think we're probably in this range. I'm going to look at the data and make a recommendation. And I'd like for you to look at the data and you to make a recommendation. And we'll put our heads together and decide what the most appropriate strategy is, right? There were times when I'd send the comps to somebody and I'd say, what do you think? And they're like 200. I said, I think we can get 215. Can we try? And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, let's try it. Next thing you know, we're under contract for over 215. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes they think their home is worth a little bit more, and it takes a partnership to try to work out those details. And sometimes it's the opposite way, right? So I like to make those decisions with the client. I want to review the same data that I'm asking them to review, right? So I've got a very old client of mine that has a place in Marietta right now, and the home is not in very good shape. It's the same tenants lived in there for 8 years that I placed 8 years ago, right? And now they want to sell it and the tenant wants to buy it, right? So the home's not in good shape, and my seller is considering selling it off market. This is a challenging project because selling it off market, only one person knows it's available. If you put it on the market, 8 billion people know it's available, right? So the only reason my seller should sell off market is if he is absolutely 100% convinced that he is getting more money than he would get on the open market, or because he's got it in his heart to sell it to this family or whatever, right? Sometimes it's not all about money. My client is insanely wealthy, and this family is quite the opposite. We'll just say that. Okay, so you never know what how the emotions are going to play into the picture. Okay. Now, so once I send the data over to the seller, we're going to create a Google Drive file for the client. This is just something I chose to do, which is I created a duplicate file in Google Drive for everything that I was putting into Dotloop or Docusign. Okay, that was just for my own personal benefit. And very early in my relationship with Luth, like something messed up with her computer and we lost a couple files. And I said, that ain't ever happening again. And we created a duplication system. I bought her and mailed her an external hard drive. And every week she was downloading every single real estate file I had ever had. I got super paranoid about it, and I was doing the same thing. Okay, so it was all the data was in a bunch of different safe places. I wasn't losing any other files again. Okay, create opportunity in Docusign, right? Share the seller's property disclosure, the community association disclosure, and the lead-based paint disclosure to be completed, right? So I may have given them, probably did give them a copy of these documents blank when we met, but I'm going to send this stuff to them digitally so they can begin to fill it out, okay? We're going to upload the seller checklist, which is this, right? We're going to upload this into the Google Drive so we can easily access it, okay? We're going to upload and edit the seller information sheet because now we know a little bit more about the file, right? We're going to email Kern for the legal description. There are other ways to do this. You can buy an account with GCC something or another. I forget. It's like $3 a month or something. But I always just email the closing attorney. So whenever you and Kern's totally fine with this. So whenever you, Kern, by the way, is our O'Kelly and Sorahan legal rep. Okay, so whenever I knew I was getting close with a file, I'd email Kern. I'd say, Kern, send me the legal description for this particular property. When you're sending when you're asking for that, here are the following things that make that task very easy to do for the attorney. Give them the owner's full legal names, give them the property address, and give them the county in which the property is located. If they have those things, it's super easy to find. If they don't have those things, it just takes extra time. That's not helpful. Okay. And when you're asking them to do a favor for you, you want to make it super helpful, right? Okay. Then we're going to send over the listing agreement and get that signed. Okay. We used to keep everything in another tracking service. This is before Command. So we had something called Commitment to Excellence, which was like probably the coolest Excel spreadsheet I'd ever seen in my entire life. Like you could literally cook dinner with this Excel spreadsheet. It was amazing. Okay, so we'd add the entry to that. Okay, we'd upload a Kwls list to Google Drive. So what I mean by that is I was doing this many years ago, where if I was going to list 123 Hill Street, then my assistant would go in and she'd go find the 1,500 people that live closest to 123 Hill Street and upload the data into the Google Drive. So right after I listed the home, I could call all the neighbors and let them know I listed the home. Okay. We're going to review the disclosure statement. And by the way, a lot of this stuff is happening like almost simultaneously. Like she's doing the Kwls list while I'm reviewing the disclosures, for example. So a lot of this stuff is going to kind of happen in groups. Okay. Now we've talked a little bit about this, review the disclosure statement with the seller. And I've told you that I may have a somewhat of a rare opinion here, and I have not been convinced to change my opinion in 16 years. So I'm going to keep it. Okay. Which is, it is the seller's responsibility to fill out the disclosure statement. It is our responsibility to make sure it presents itself properly. Let me give you an example. In the disclosure statement, there are things like check the box if the landscape lights are going to be included. Check the box if the window hardware is going to be included. Check the box if the switch plate covers are going to be included. Okay. If they don't check the box, I'm going to ask them to check the box, or I'm going to ask them to say, hey, are you planning to take all the knobs out of your house? Or is this an oversight? Can you fill this out completely, please? Right? Not in that kind of tone, but remember the disclosure statement, when it's shared to the buyer, that's kind of like outside of looking at the house itself. This is like, okay, here's the way I operate. If the disclosure state is sloppy and inconsistent and you're leaving out things that shouldn't be left out, the buyer's going to get an impression of you. Does that make sense? So I want that thing to be tight. So if it doesn't read the way I want to read it, I'm going to encourage the seller to word it differently. Let me give you an example. If they had a basement flood, you can describe a basement flood a couple different ways, right? Let's say this would be a not a great way to explain a basement flood, right? Pipe burst, basement flooded, we fixed it. Is that true? Yes. Is that thorough? No. Does that give reassurances to people that might want to buy that home in the future? Absolutely not. So what's a better way to say that, right? Pipe burst, appropriate licensed and bonded professionals in the insurance company were alerted immediately. All work was completed by licensed professional people. Insurance was involved. Everything mold testing was conducted. We've got all receipts and documentation available for review. We've had no problems since. Does that give you a little bit more peace of mind? Is that also true? Does that make sense? So if your seller is sloppy in the way that they're explaining things, especially things that went wrong, then it's your job, in my opinion, to say, hey, is there a more thorough way we could explain this? Clearly, I'm not suggesting we bend the truth of any way, but if you went through the trouble to do something appropriately, share it. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. How do you approach them then? Because they've already completed this thing and you're going back and asking them to do it again?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's by electronic signature, right? So, or it's all electronic. So I'd send it back to them and say, hey, can you be a little bit more specific in the way you describe that? Or can you just check box 6A that says that you're going to include the switch plate covers? Because I'm sure that was an oversight,
And I
right?
think when you're setting it up, one of the things I do is I talk to them about how extremely important this is, and in the partnership that we have in getting the highest and best for their home, that filling this out correctly and completely is really important. So I try and set it up, and I know you do too, Bill, the very first time, and then 9 times out of 10 you don't have to go back to them.
Exactly. And by the way, I would say it's the same way with the community association disclosure. So remember, here's an interesting fact about community associations, okay? It is very challenging. Most association documents require, quorums to change the bylaws or to raise the fees, right? And quorums are, if you've ever been involved in an HOA, very difficult to get, right? Nobody really wants to go to the HOA meeting unless they want to complain about something, right? And therefore, it's hard for HOAs to raise dues, and it's quite unpopular. So a lot of the ways that they go around raising dues that they don't need a community vote for is to hit people when they're buying in the community. So there'll be a exorbitant transfer fee or new member fee or whatever 10 different phrases they use to call the new person fee, right? So there may be $1,000 new person fee, and they're collecting that money because they can't get the community to vote on raising the fees. Does that make sense? So they still need more revenues. They just have to look for a different way to do it. So for example, if I bought this place, let's say 10 years ago, and that fee wasn't in place, and there's a question on the disclosure statement that says, hey, is there any transfer fees? And they write, no, I didn't pay any transfer fees. It's up to us, in my opinion, because it's just going to come back to not wreck the transaction, but cause headache later on. It's up to me, I believe, as the agent to call the HOA and confirm all the stuff that they've disclosed. And if there's something that is incorrect or different from the way it was disclosed, I'm going to share the information with the seller and say, would you mind redisclosing? Because if you don't disclose this properly, you're going to pay for it anyway. Make sense? Our job, remember, to make it as simple as possible, is there is about 50,000 things that could go wrong in a real estate transaction. Our job is to mitigate as much of that as possible and to foresee issues that could come back to create headache later on, like some lack of disclosure, and solve that problem ahead of time. Okay. So we're reviewing the disclosures with the seller. We have all the signed documentation into Google Drive. I'm going to schedule the photographer, edit pictures. I wasn't editing any pictures, by the way. but certainly professional photography is critical. The dual entry form, this is complete the dual entry form and send to Luth. What that was and they still use it. It's basically a pamphlet, if you will, that has all of the questions that FMLS and Georgia MLS are going to ask you as you're putting the listing in. And you have it with you. So for example, if you are putting the listing in yourself, you don't necessarily have to fill it out. But if somebody else is going to fill out the listing for you, my assistant who's never seen the home, then I need to answer all the questions so she can do it. So there was always these questions like that I always would forget to, all right, Candace, I'm going to stay here for a bit if you can speak for me in there. There's always these questions that I would forget to look for, like, does the community have sidewalks? Or is there street lights, or where is the attic access, or is the water heater gas or electric? Is there ridge vents on the roof, right? It's these random things that, like, when you're casually looking through a home, you don't think to stare at, right? So I would always carry with me a list of those questions to remind me what I needed to take note of when I was in the home. And then I would complete the dual entry form, send it off to Luth, and I was busy working on something else while she was putting the listing in the system for me, right? Okay, so we're going to input the listing with pictures and documents for both of the listing services. I'm going to email the FMLS data page to the seller. Say, hey, congratulations. Just to remind you, I am so honored that you chose to work with me. And it is my commitment to protect your equity and to protect you and your family during this transaction, and to go way beyond what you probably expect me to do to get the best price and terms for this deal for you. So thank you for letting me be a part of it, right? Here's your data page. Do you like what you see, right? Sometimes they'll be like, hey, you forgot to mention, the tray ceiling, whatever. So we make a little edit, right? Okay, we're going to update superekey.com. That's the online, basically, portal that keeps your showing information straight based on your lockbox. Update KWLS, which is the Keller Williams listing service. Create a flyer, create a virtual tour, upload those virtual tour to YouTube or a blog or social media, do a blog post about the listing, do a social media alert about the listing. Again, you do what you want, but these are just some ideas that, to let people know that you now have a new opportunity, right? Knock the 50 doors around that home. So you knock, let's say 10 people to the left of the home, 10 people to the right of the home, and the 20 or 30 people across the street. Say, hey, I'm Bill. We got the Smith's home on the market here. We're going to be hosting an open house at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Wanted to invite you to stop by. Do you happen to know anyone that's moving to the area? By the way, while I'm in front of you, when it comes to real estate, who is it that you trust? You don't trust anyone? Wonderful. I would love to earn the responsibility of being your resource for real estate from this moment forward. Is there anything that I can help you with today? Do you have any questions whatsoever? Do you need an introduction to a vendor? Do you want an estimate of the value of your home? Do you need a landscaper? Maybe not say that, because they'll be like, what's wrong with my landscaping, right? But you want to offer help, right? As I've said many, many times, we are basically really well-paid concierges, okay? You'll be asked to do some things that will not result in a paycheck immediately, and you just got to do them because we're trying to grow our business, right? We're trying to wow people. We're trying to get into relationship with people, okay? So then I would go, what?
Hey, real quick. So just looking at this, so you have all the information, you are ready to put this house on the market. Your first place that you're going to put it is input it into FMLS?
When you're, I'm not sure I understand your question, but yes, when you're ready to go, when you've got all the paperwork signed, all the disclosures, and you're ready to go live, yes, FMLS is the first place you go.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when you go to Georgia MLS, there's a service called
Ditto.
Ditto. Yeah. It's been a while since I put in a listing. Ditto, and that basically takes the data from FMLS and then ask a couple of unique questions that Georgia MLS asks, and then the file is ready to go in Georgia MLS too. Okay, thanks, Pam. Okay, cold calls for listings. So now Luth has already put in the data into my system. So now the home's listed, it's ready to go. So I pull off that list and I cold call a bunch of people that live around there and see if I can drum up some opportunities, right? We execute the feedback system for showings. So what we would do is we'd have like a feedback sheet for the buyer's agents that came to see the home, right? What did you think about the property? What did you think about the price? What was your favorite part of the home? What was your least favorite part of the home? What's your level of interest in moving forward with the home? That kind of stuff, right? Do you have any suggestions for, marketing or listing the property or something like that? And that stuff is really helpful because if you've been telling the seller for 2 months they need to pull down all the wallpaper, they're like, yeah, you just want a sale. But when somebody else says it, they're like, oh, this wallpaper, maybe it should come down. What do you think, honey? It's like, right? I'm trying to keep this, kind of fun and interesting. Okay. Weekly calls to the seller to update. Okay. There is nothing that bothers a seller more than you being super assertive and aggressive until you get the paperwork signed, and then they don't see you to the closing table. Okay. They're probably not, if they don't know what you're doing each day, they think you're playing tennis. Okay. You got to remind them that you're working for them every single day. Okay. So weekly calls, if not more often, depending on what the client wants, for showing updates, right? Giving feedback. Hey, this week we had 4 showings. One of them's coming back for a second showing. The first 2 people said the cat urine is really strong. The third person said the backyard needs to be mowed, and the 4th person is considering putting an offer in, or whatever it is, right? Third-party validation or news is oftentimes what you need to justify the client moving forward. That's what we use Chartmasters for, by the way, right? So if I say, oh, the market's really hot, you're going to have to put more, you're going to have to pay more than list price for the home. They're like, I don't want to do that. But if I show them the data that says that, look, close to 60% of your buyer pool is willing to pay or has paid list price or more for the home, it's different. Does that make sense? Okay, we receive the offer and review with the seller. Now, what I don't really have in here is during the listing presentation or some of our kind of prep work as we're getting this thing ready to go, I've already explained things like earnest money to them. I've already explained things like financing contingency, due diligence, and appraisal contingency. They pretty much already know how the process is going to run. Okay, that way, when an offer comes in, I can explain it to them in like 10 minutes instead of 3 hours. Does that make sense? I want to hit the highlights. Hey, they got this much earnest money. They want to spend this much for the home. This is the stuff they're asking for. This is the price they want to pay for it. What do you think? As opposed to going over to their house or something and then spending all night talking about an offer when my family's eating dinner without me. Make sense? Okay. We go under contract, binding agreement. Okay, binding agreement sets off a number of different things which have to happen very quickly. As you can see, most of which is administrative. See that? Okay, so we're going to update the seller info sheet. So now we know who the buyer is, we know who the buyer's agent is, we know the terms of the paperwork, all of that, right? We're going to confirm an updated, we have a confirm an updated file in Google Drive and Docusign. Technically, this should probably be reversed. Let me reverse it just to make sure it's totally clear. So it's going to initiate in Docusign because that's where the electronic signature program was. And then we're going to duplicate it all in Google Drive. We're going to share the paperwork. So once the contract goes binding, all the parties need a copy, right? So the buyer or the seller needs a copy, the closing attorney needs a copy, the loan officer needs a copy. Notice I did not put the LO here, the loan officer, because that's going to be shared generally by the buyer's agent, right? And this is a seller checklist. So they understand that the lender needs a copy of the contract. I don't necessarily have to be the one to send it to them. Okay, I'm going to email all the deadlines to the buyer's agent, right? So when I send off the paperwork to the buyer's agent, I'm going to say, hey, congratulations on, going under contract. Here are the important dates and deadlines for the contract. Please do, count all the days yourself and confirm that I'm accurate. Attached, you'll see all the ratified contracts or executed contracts. Looking forward to working together, blah, 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 right? Or it would say, hey, my assistant will be handling, the following tasks between now and closing. Here is her contact information, that kind of stuff, okay? Email the client calendar of dates to the seller, so the seller can be aware of these dates as well, right? Change the status in Georgia MLS and FMLS. Time for a new video. Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this sales transaction. We are one step closer to getting you to Key West or whatever, right? Congratulations, right? Update Luth's calendar with deadlines. So she had a calendar as well. So this could be, for y'all's purposes, put it on your calendar. So you can't look at your calendar and not see that you got deadlines that you need to be aware of and preparing for.
Real quick,
Okay.
what's your impression of a handwritten note compared to a video?
I would consider doing both. I think they serve somewhat two different purposes. I think that it shows that you are you're in tune with kind of the emotional, like kind of traditional method of communication, and it shows that you are, kind of modern and kind of techie, if you will. I kind of like the idea of both. Good point, Rick. Thank you.
Yesterday, Paige Pace, she had a whole marketing system of hers. And one of the things that she does is once she goes binding, she sends flowers. So there's a lot of different ways to touch.
Right. I heard a guy at Family Reunion a few years ago, or maybe recently. He said, look, let's say I'm going to buy a closing gift of, I don't know, $50, right? So at the end of the closing, you give them a $50 present. So instead of doing that, he split it up into like 4 or 5 different presents, right? So he says, hey, we're under contract, congratulations, here, enjoy, here's 2 tickets to the movie theater, right? Hey, thank you so much for, listing with me. Here is a coupon for a restaurant, go grab a cocktail or something, right? Or, hey, we're past due diligence, here's a, go grab a coffee on me, something like that, right? So you keep them engaged. I'm not suggesting you spend a ton of money, but you're keeping them engaged by gifts along the way, right? And that's gonna, once you build up, when you have one client, it's not so hard to manage, but when you've got a bunch of clients, you gotta have a system to manage it.
Yeah, that's the thing that I wanted to say. It was part of her system, just like this list. I mean, she had it down exactly what she was going to do. I mean, she would buy things in bulk because she was doing the same thing to every client.
Of course. Yeah, it's I want you guys to visualize you're building a business from the ground up. This is not easy, right? Imagine you went into like a big company that's got a, customer service department, and they've got a marketing department, and they've got a communications department, and they've got the telemarketers and all that kind of stuff. It's like you're walking into a big empty building and you're like, hey, where's the marketing department here? And they're like, you hadn't created it yet, right? Hey, where are all the telemarketers? Hey, that's you, by the way. Where are you? Are you doing any calls today? Right? So you're creating this from the ground up. So you walk in, you say, hey, I need to build a marketing department. Is there anyone that's done this before me? Right? What tools does Keller Williams offer? How can I mold this to fit my brand, image, mission, etc.? Right? Okay. I'm going to try to get through this a little quicker. So now I'm going to call the seller to summarize the next steps. A lot of this is very similar to the buyer side. Remember, you gotta let your client know what's happening next. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes agents make, is they think they know what they're doing, right? And they probably do. The problem is, if you don't tell your client feels lost. It's like a trust walk, right? Have you ever done a trust walk where you're blindfolded and somebody's got your shoulders and they're like, okay, duck, lift up your left leg, bend down, turn over, close your eyes, watch out for that branch, right? If you don't show them that stuff, they don't know what's coming. And when they don't know what's coming, they get nervous and they get scared and they start to doubt whether their guide, you, knows what they're doing. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Now we're going to update the tracker again because the home's under contract and I want to, keep track of the dates and the numbers and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm going to call all those people again and say, hey, I know I just called you 3 days ago, but that home is under contract already. The Smiths are on their way to Key West. Who's next? You know anyone that wants to buy anything, sell anything, invest? What can I do to help you today, sir? Thank you. Right? Commission agreement. Commission agreement is the what's called the instructions to closing attorney. That is only signed by the agents, and that confirms that the commission, what the commissions are, and the fact that typically the seller is paying them, and you would send that off to the attorney so that they can add that to the file. You're going to negotiate any repairs. We used to do this thing called like negotiating repairs. Like we don't do that so much anymore because of the market, but you know, a long time ago, they used to fix stuff for buyers, right? It's so weird. And thank you so much for laughing, Pam. I don't get to hear your laugh enough anymore. All right, update Google Drive and Docusign. Okay, we want to always have those files updated. Remember yesterday we talked about once the attorney gets the package or gets the binding contract, okay, they're going to send out probably within a week or so, they're going to send out a seller information sheet and a buyer information sheet. Okay, the seller information sheet is basically like, how do we reach you? What's your forwarding address? Do we have permission to speak to your lender and get a payoff letter? All that kind of stuff. So you're probably going to need to facilitate getting that filled out for the seller and sent back to the attorney so that they can continue to do all their work. Okay. As we said yesterday, scheduled closing. Generally, the closing is scheduled by the person who does it first. Okay. So if you don't want to close at 9 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, then schedule the closing before the other agent does. Okay. I didn't want closings at the end of the day, and I didn't want closings first thing in the morning because then I have to wake up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Those were different days than now, obviously, to do walkthroughs and these kind of things, right? Particularly at the end of the week. If you don't schedule a closing on Friday for 4 o'clock, it's going to be a mess. Okay. Closing.
I recommend scheduling closings Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Exactly.
From 10 to 3.
I love that suggestion. You try to avoid the end of the day, try to avoid the beginning of the day, and try to avoid Monday when no one's been working for 3 days in a row, or Friday when the banks close. Okay.
And also last week of the month, I try hard to avoid that. And I just I tell my buyers and sellers, I'm like, look, the closing attorneys are booked solid that time. If there's any hiccups, it just takes so much longer to correct it.
Exactly.
If we close earlier in the month, then they can correct it right away and no problem.
Very good point. Thank you, Pam. Next on the list is lender introduction and closing, or I'm sorry, in checkup. So basically what's happening here is even though I'm on the seller side, I've already, by the way, one thing I should add here, I'm just going to go ahead and add it because it's really important. Where do we have here? Where does it say binding agreement? Here we go. Okay, guys, I don't know if everyone would agree with me on this. I have never ever worked with a seller I've never encouraged a seller to sign a contract until I get a chance to speak with the buyer's lender. Okay, I want to test that guy or that woman and make sure when my seller is going to pull their home off the market that I know if the buyer's lender is worried, I want to know. If the buyer's lender is confident, I want to know. Does that make sense? So
are they prevented from talking to you about that? That sounds confidential.
I'm not asking for their social security number or their credit score or anything. I'm saying things like, have you reviewed all of the documents, or did they just tell you they make $100,000 a year? And I would ask a very vague question like, do you foresee any problems occurring with this file? Right? Your seller or your buyer has said that they can close by May 30th. Do you see that as being a problem? Right? They're saying they're asking for a 21-day financing contingency. Do you see any problem with that? I'm not asking for anything private. I don't care about that stuff. I want to test the waters with this particular lender. Okay. Yeah, the lender is prevented from saying things like, yeah, this guy's got a 640 credit score and a huge debt to the IRS, so I'm scared to death about this one, right? He would just say, I'm scared to death about this one. Make sense?
Yeah, and it's in the contract that they talk to you, that the buyer and seller are giving, permission for them to talk to you. But I agree with Bill. I do not recommend, and that's one of the big deals about buyers using people who work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
Because if they're trying to get an offer accepted over the weekend, the listing agent can't get in touch with that lender.
Yeah, and if I can't get in touch with the lender, then I've got to make a decision, or I've got to give my opinion on that fact to the seller so they can make a decision on whether they want to take that risk or not, right? Okay, so lender introduction and checkup. So if I'm just going to check in with the lender. Hey, everything going okay? Just want to make sure you know I'm here to help you. If you need any help whatsoever, let's talk, right? Everything going okay? Anything I can do to help? I'm also doing the same thing with the attorney, right? Because remember, I'm the choreographer. I'm in charge of all the different people that are doing their job. And if one of them slips up, my seller might not sell, and I might not get paid. So I got to watch over everybody. I'm not talking about micromanaging them. I'm just calling the attorney and saying, hey, I'm Bill. I'm the seller's agent over at Hill Street. How's everything going? If you need help getting any documents from the HOA, or you have any questions or whatever, just call me, okay? Here's all my information, no big deal, right? So I'm watching the financing contingency, I'm watching the appraisal contingency. I'm checking in with the STIPs and notes. Like there used to be things like, seller will furnish receipts of all, plumbing work, 5 days before closing, or, seller will send off the HOA documents within 4 days of binding agreement date or something like that. So I'm just making sure that anything that is unique to that transaction, that is getting some attention, okay? We're going to complete all repairs. We're going to have a clear to close, closing gift, attend the closing, photo at closing, complete all the final paperwork. My client has now sold their home, so they don't live there anymore, which means that I need to update their Google contact file. And I'll put their new address, or I'll delete the old one until we find out what the new one is, right? So I'm trying to be super detailed here, but this is just a reminder of running a real estate business at the highest level is very complex, right? If you're finding yourself doing similar things over and over again, you need to write a list of, hey, I need to build a system for this, or I need to find somebody's system for this and steal it, right? Okay, we're going to update the tracker again. So again, the tracker would say, how many actives do you have? How many pendings do you have? How many closed do you have? And all that kind of thing. It was essentially a visual pipeline, if you will. Okay, post the pic to social media, video congratulations. I'll cold call everyone again from the Kwls saying, hey, the home sold for the highest the neighborhood has ever seen, $350. By the way, is there anything that I can do to help you today? Right? Handwritten note to the seller, send out a survey. Okay, handwritten note to the co-op agent. Again, I was I had kind of recruiting on my mind, so I was trying to, I was taking a few unusual steps or rare steps to forge a relationship with the other agent that most agents wouldn't have bothered with, right? I was collecting and saving the written testimonial and video testimonial for my client. I was adding that to social media. I was moving the file. This should actually say Google Drive. We used to use this thing called Dropbox. Uh-oh. Okay, write a testimonial for the co-op agent. I think that's nice. I think that's nice. Hey, I really like the way you handled the appraisal, kind of hiccup. That was super professional. You were really well organized, and your clients are lucky to have worked with you, right? By the way, every single time that I had a decent agent on the other side of the table, I would make a point at the closing to make their agent look awesome in front of their client. Hey, you got a great agent over there. You're lucky to have them, right? It's a small community, y'all. that agent might be the one that has the listing that your buyer really likes in 2 weeks. And they're like, oh, that's the guy that made me look like a hero at the closing table. I think I'd like to work with him again. You see what I'm saying? Okay. And then because I was doing some recruiting, I had a co-op agent script, add them to an agent database, invite them for coffee, and then I call the seller a week later, basically to say, how's everything going? Did the move go okay? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. All right. What do you guys think about what you just saw?
I think it was super helpful to me to get the whole big picture of it.
Perfect. That's
My question,
exactly why we
how
do
do
it.
I review this? Is this recorded someplace?
This is recorded. I'll send you a copy of it, and I'll send you this sheet as well. Because the one I sent you yesterday, I didn't make a whole lot of corrections. I just updated some of the different software that I would use today rather than what I used 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
Okay. What else? What other questions you guys have? I know we've gone way over today, so I'm very grateful for your attention. Just a couple of housekeeping things. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock in my room, we'll have the growth mastermind, and in Candace's room, same time, we'll have the launch mastermind. Today, Candace and I will both be in leadership spring masterminds the whole day, but if you got any questions, just put them on there and we'll do our best to get to you as soon as possible. Please also don't forget that yesterday was the end of week 3 of our reporting. So if you could put up, just take a quick moment to add your appointments and your contacts and your database ads and all that. I'm going to be working with Candace and Luke today on the schedule for next week. So once I see what you guys are doing or not doing, or where your kind of coaching opportunities are, then I can create a curriculum that makes the most sense for you. So like, do we need to create urgency? Do we need to deal with objection handlers? Do we need more appointments? Do we need whatever it may be? Once I know what you're up to, whether you're overperforming or underperforming, then I can coach specifically to your gap. Okay. What else? Everything else okay, guys?
This is great. This is really helpful because there's so many components that we have to remember for these transactions. And so I know for me, I like a bulleted or a checklist like this, and it just really helps to organize and help remind you of what needs to be done. Because I know for me, my brain doesn't, it can only hold so much. So this is a great way to ensure that we don't miss anything, that nothing falls through the cracks.
Thank you for sharing that. And Corey, I don't think you're rare there, right? We all have a limited capacity for how much stuff we can keep up here and remember it, right? So if you're like me and you're like you and others, what is your system for keeping all this organized, right? Do you have a journal, or do you have some type of structure that allows you to record all the crazy ideas that you have for your business, or all the people that you need to speak to on a particular day, right? Like I said before, I've been using this kind of structure for a long time. By the way, I failed like about 100 times trying to figure out what works the best for me. But I've got this in paper planner here that is what I use for essentially the brain dumps. If you want to know where my brain dumps go, you should check my WhatsApp chat with my assistant and this.
Same thing.
Right.
I got the same one. It's so good.
And this is where I put the things that I have to do on a daily basis. So for example, if I say, Michael, I'll call you Tuesday, it'll go here. But if I say, Michael, I'll call you Tuesday at 2, now that's an appointment. That's different. So that goes here, right? You guys can't really see that, but see what I'm saying? So my point is you got to figure out, how do you control both the things that you've committed to a certain day and time, and how do you control the chaos of what's going on up here? Like an example of a step that you'd probably forget is, look, your seller just sold. They don't live at that house anymore. You got to fix that up, right? Or the buyer just bought. Okay, they got a new address. Don't you want to be the first person to mail them something, right? The first piece of mail they get at their new address is a little handwritten note that says how honored you were to be a part of their experience. Guys, this is a big deal for them. Y'all get that? All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks, Bill.
See ya.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Bill.